Look, these Sunbelt battleground states, frankly, for the Joe Biden campaign, these numbers are an absolute disaster. The smallest lead is in Arizona for Donald Trump. He's up 6. Look at this, 9 in Georgia, 13 in Nevada. My goodness gracious, my God. That is a huge lead. No Democrat has lost that state since John Kerry lost it back in 2004. How about these Great Lake battleground states? This is something that the Joe Biden campaign can work with. Look, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump up 3, but that's well within the margin of error. Wisconsin, Donald Trump up 1, well within the margin of error. And actually, a Joe Biden lead well within the margin of error, up a point here. This they can work with the Joe Biden campaign. This, the Donald Trump campaign, absolutely loves, and it looks like a lot of the other polling on the Sunbelt battleground.
When you're looking into the numbers, why do you think Biden is doing better in the Great Lakes and Trump is doing so much better in the Sunbelt?
Yeah, the Trump coalition is changing. That's basically what's cooking here. This is at least one of the big reasons why. So this is among likely voters in all these battleground states we just spoke about. Back in 2020, 84% of the Trump campaigns, the Trump coalition was white. Look where it is now. It's 78%. The non-white portion of the Trump coalition is 13% in 2020. Look at this now. It's 19%. So the Trump coalition is becoming more diverse. And of course, those Sunbelt battleground states are more diverse than the Great Lake battleground states.
You're looking at the Nevadas and the Arizonas here.
Of course, if you look at Nevada, Arizona, heavy Hispanic population, Georgia, heavily African-American population, with the Michigan does have some black voters in it, but Pennsylvania and Wisconsin are heavily, heavily white.
It's very interesting. Okay, add it all up. What does this say about where the race stands right now? We're talking Electoral College and the race to 270.
Yeah, the race to 270. It's advantage Donald Trump, but he's not over the 270 mark.
Stop it there.
Bro, so, what's going on with my whites?
Yeah, you got to talk to your people, Kev.
Oh, man.
Like, we're going to vote for Biden this time? Like,
oh my God. I don't know.
You got to have a word with them. You got to have a word with them. But gentlemen, just to add a little bit more context to those numbers, the poll numbers revealed how issues like cost of living, the economy, Israel-Hamas war, and immigration have caused widespread dissatisfaction among Americans, all while raising concerns over Biden's ability to improve their quality of life. About 70% of voters polled said that their country's political and economic systems need a major overhaul. And 13% of Biden supporters believe he would be able to bring about such change during his second term. So 70% of Americans agree that there's an issue and needs something to be done with it. And only 13% of Biden supporters feel some type of confidence that Biden will be able to do that in his second term. A little bit more, just before I get all of y'all's reaction about this, 40% of Trump supporters polled said the economy and the cost of living is one of the most important thing. But the key interesting thing here is that Trump and Biden are now tied among people between 18 to 29 years old. They're tied in the Hispanic vote. And just more context, Biden carried the Hispanic vote by like 60 or 70 compared to, the Trump getting 20, 30, 40% or whatever. So he's winning all across. He's winning a lot. And as you can guys see, the only support that he's losing is among white folks. So what do y'all think about that?
Kev, I think you got to explain yourself.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that's really fascinating to me, because I guarantee you a lot of people look at that and they're like, and because even you watched that CNN video and you saw that they highlighted that Trump now has 19% with non-white voters, and everybody's going to look at it and be like, oh my God, the blacks, the Hispanics, they're all winning, like Trump's winning. I saw that coming. I said back in 2020, it's crazy. Like, even though Trump lost, which is what I'm supposed to say to not get banned on YouTube, even though Trump lost, I still said back in 2020, I said it's crazy how if you look at the numbers, he still gained a crap ton with all these minority voters, all these non-white voters. I called it. I said it's going to even be bigger in 2024, no matter who even back then, when I didn't know it was going to be Trump, I said no matter who the Republican nominee is, they will gain even more with non-white voters. But what's fascinating to me is that white people are losing. Why is that? I think that's what more people need to be talking about. And is it because it's just percentage? So it's not like it's because there's less white people or anything. So why are white people, especially when we notice so much with these Palestine protests and other things that are going on socially, that being white is kind of under attack, that you're not allowed to be proud of yourself if you're white, that white people are bad, they're evil, they're terrible. Why would they lean into the people that call them bad and terrible? I really don't know. And it must just be because they say that the way to not be bad or terrible, or to be less bad and terrible, is to like kiss the feet of illegal immigrants or some shit. I don't know.
I'd be interested to know whether they included in that questionnaire, or whether one of the reasons is because Bobby Kennedy's running. and he's taking some support.
Maybe.
So,
Could be.
I can very well see that being the reason why. That's to me makes the most logical sense because, I mean, you don't have that many pro Palestine, anti Trump people. Sorry, anti Biden, because then they wouldn't go. No, it doesn't make sense because then he wouldn't support Biden either. So if it's not going to Trump, I don't think it's going to Biden. I don't know who's switching from Trump to Biden this time around. Like, oh, hey guys, yeah, things are a lot better than before. They're either going to Bobby Kennedy because of the Palestine issue or the vax issue, or I don't know. It's a hard one.
It is a hard one. And I want to take you guys to another really interesting point with all these polls that we're seeing here. The 3 states that we saw that are pretty still close is the blue wall, essentially. You still got Wisconsin still going 1 point over to Biden. Michigan is close, and so is Pennsylvania. And honestly, if Biden holds all of what he won last time and he wins those 3, he wins the presidency. That's his easiest route now to winning the re-election there. So knowing that he has to secure the blue wall, or not to secure the blue wall, but Trump needs to at least take one of those states away while continuing to show strength in Georgia and all these other places. What would be the best VP candidate out there right now? Because we need to win one of these states. It's mandatory, essentially.
I mean, if you ask me, he's got Pennsylvania. If he keeps all those 3 states, who would the VP pick be? That's a hard one. I don't know.
He needs a VP pick that would be really, because the problem with the with those northern states, I don't know if you can call them northern states, but they're up north from me, and they make up the blue wall. Those are going to be your more liberal, kind of not so conservative friendly areas there, and they're looking for more of a social friendly conservative rather than a hardcore conservative. So I feel like a good VP candidate could really help out there.
See, what I believe right now, David, and this is not to be like mean or anything, but I think you're creating a false dichotomy. I think that you're saying that, or not even necessarily a false dichotomy, but just like a false scenario in the fact that it has to be based on the VP pick, that's what's going to win over these states. Right now, one thing I know is Wisconsin is a fascinating state, and the fact that back in 2022 they elected a Democrat governor, but Ron Johnson a Republican senator. Ron Johnson still has not, and Laura Loomer, as much as Laura Loomer can do some great journalism sometimes, she's absolutely retarded sometimes too.
Yeah,
and she
posted
posted
called retarded on the show more than once.
And she came out and she like blasted the fact that Ron Johnson and a bunch of other people have yet to endorse Donald Trump. I really think that's a strategic decision. And that's why I'm saying it's not necessarily just about a VP pick. I think that Ron Johnson is waiting until closer to the election to endorse because he knows how important his endorsement can be and making a news headline out of his endorsement. If Ron Johnson comes out now, nobody's going to remember. Nobody's going to be like, oh my gosh, my moderate Republican senator endorse Donald Trump. No. If he does that a week before the election or whenever early voting starts for Wisconsin, then he can come out, say that, and Trump might be able to edge into that plus minus 1% margin of error that currently has Biden winning. So that's really
you don't think though that a good VP pick could help swing like a state like Wisconsin 5,000 votes, 3,000 votes? Because perfect example of what you said, they voted for a Democrat governor, but here they picked Ron Johnson as their senator because Ron Johnson isn't your hardcore MAGA conservative, right? You're right.
But what I'm saying is that it's not just the VP pick. Is that there's other things that play into the factor of it.
Oh, 100%. I was just wondering if a strategic VP pick could help out in these battleground states. I definitely agree with you 100%. It won't come down to the VP pick.
Here's my issue about that. And I didn't come up with this idea, so I'm not going to claim ownership of it, but it really struck me as interesting. And, I know that we've joked about Nikki Haley being a VP pick and that would really help with, the classic conservatives, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I don't know who said this, but it said, no, Trump has to pick someone that the deep state would be just as afraid to have as president, like of Vivek. Because if something were to happen to Trump in the White House and you get Nikki Haley as VP, guess what? That's what they wanted all along. They don't have to go through this whole process of the voting and stuff like that. They just got to, something could happen to Trump. So you pick someone who's, kind of moderate, et cetera, wishy-washy, can be strong-armed into doing whatever they want her or he to do. I don't think that's the position. I think Trump is ahead by so much right now. I really think you got to pick someone who people can identify with, like a Vivek, right? He's an immigrant, and I know there's a lot of Ethiopians over in Minnesota now or whatever. Who knows if there's anything there. But regardless, I think he has to pick someone that
Well,
is very similar to him.
and that's to an extent I'd say
I
similar to him.
disagree,
We're gonna
but
talk because I would kind of disagree, and I want to hear David's take on this too. But that's why I say JD Vance too. Is so JD Vance has come. I mean, he's been a hardcore conservative since the day he started in office, since the day he ran for Senate. He's from Ohio, Midwestern area, he's in Ohio now, but he also lived in Appalachia. So and grew up in destitute. I mean, if you've read or watched Hillbilly Elegy, you've seen that he learned his values from his grandmother because his mom was high on smack.
yeah,
And he briefly went through a time where he was hanging out with a bad group of people, smoking weed and getting and could have been on a really poor life track. He left when he was doing interviews to intern for law firms while he was at Yale. He left because his mom needed to be rechecked back into rehab. Like JD Vance is somebody who is the epitome of the American dream. And so that's why I would say JD Vance, because he's relatable. He is not an establishment elite. And he also stands for the things that Trump stands for and relates to the people more so. He's not a billionaire from New York. And Trump does a great job making people forget that he's a billionaire from New York, but JD Vance is not.
I actually don't know anything about him other than just clips I've seen of him. So what I would ask is, and again, I don't know anything about the person, is who made that documentary? What company? Like, who funded it, and why? Why was it made? Like, was it made to maybe push him into
Hillbilly Elegy? So it wasn't a documentary.
It's a book.
He wrote the book.
He wrote it himself.
Yes, he wrote it. It's an autobiography. Well, it's a memoir that he wrote essentially, because it's not just all of his life. It's not autobiography necessarily. It's just a memoir. And then it got picked up by Netflix. So it is on Netflix. You can watch it, but that was before he ever ran for office, before he came out as a Republican. And then he actually announced his run for Senate around the time that it was going viral on Netflix. And then people were like, boycott Hillbilly Elegy because he's a conservative, because he's a Republican. And so they were saying boycott Netflix for allowing it when it came out.
Yeah, JD Vance, I've grown to like him a lot, especially once I found out about the whole story and seeing that film. It was awesome, and he's a great example of what you can achieve in America, especially when you have these opportunities. Fabian, I disagree with you about the idea the notion that Trump should pick a VP that's as close as possible to him. I understand the whole idea about, they can't take him out because then they'll get the Trump 2.0 there, which is it's a good point there. But that the thing is that I'd want a VP candidate that could perhaps open up the pool to those people, because every poll that we see, there's still 10, 20, some cases 25% Republicans, former Trump voters who are disenfranchised with Trump and are more than likely not going to vote Trump this time around. They may do a boycott vote with going RFK Jr., which is why we're seeing some polls showing he's pulling from Trump. I think he needs somebody like JD Vance is a great example, actually, because he's kind of like Mike Pence. Trump won the first time around with Mike Pence. He wasn't your black candidate, your woman candidate, your more liberal candidate, or by any means. He was more conservative than I would say Trump is. So I think I keep going back and forth. Does he need somebody more socially liberal, like a Tulsi Gabbard type person? I don't know. JD Vance is pretty damn good. Yes. I really don't know at this point, but I do know that the polls are fantastic. And before we get off the polls here, I just want to give you guys another outlook at some polls, because obviously with the presidential elections, there are going to be some down ballot tickets. You're going to have, or down ballot races. You're going to have Senate seats that are really important. You're going to have House seats that are really important. And to highlight this week's Senate race that I think is really important to look at is over in Arizona, because guys, we just saw a poll. Trump was up in Arizona by what? 6 points, 7 points, 8 points, something crazy like that, right?
Around there.
Something like that. So if we can pull up that Carrie Lake poll, I want Carrie Lake. Everybody knows Carrie Lake. She's running for Arizona Senate, obviously. And the one interesting thing that I keep seeing with these polls is that, like, you'll have Trump up by 6 points, and in the same poll down ballot, you'll have Carrie Lake losing that poll by 3 points. And here's a perfect example of that. We're looking at that right now. Why do you guys think that's happening?
That's interesting. So in the down ballot in Arizona, Trump's leading by 6 and Carrie Lake's losing by 3.
Yep. on the
That's
state,
a
and then
that's
it's the
a
exact same
9-point
poll.
swing.
It
That's
is.
huge. That
What's
is
the
massive.
margin? What's the margin of error on that?
I don't know. I'd have to look into it. It's probably about 2 to 3 points.
That's really interesting.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So
Why-
I did not know that.
I would say, I mean, I've been a person where I try to be nice because I think Carrie Lake would always vote the way that I would want her to as a representative. But frankly, I think that she comes off as disingenuous. Something that I've noticed. I've seen her speak live multiple times. If you've ever seen, and I've also seen Donald Trump speak live. If you guys watched his New Jersey rally the other day, it was absolutely phenomenal. He gets up, and there's been a few times where I've gotten a little bored because he goes for so long. But overall, he treats it, and when he has a really good crowd, he's like a stand-up comedian, and he goes for 2+ hours where he can be really funny for that whole 2+ hours. And he's really good. Carrie Lake, on the other hand, whenever I've seen her speak, I call them TikTok speeches. She gets up and she'll have really good 15 seconds to a minute, where what it does is it seeks to every 15 seconds to a minute get the crowd to clap. And it'll go from issue to issue to issue to issue, where she'll go 15 seconds about immigration, a minute about patriotism, 15 seconds about inflation, a minute about Biden being terrible. And it'll just be, like I said, a TikTok speech. It never actually gets to the heart of any issue and never actually makes you realize her as a person. It always feels like it's a campaign speech. And that's how Carrie Lake is. She seems disingenuous to me. And while it might just be that she's a media head because she was in the media prior to ever running for office, maybe it's just because she's so used to media that she comes off as inauthentic. It might be that, but I think that's really what it is. She just doesn't come off the same way as Trump. People don't like her.
Oh, 100%. And that's, I think, a big part of it too. But I wonder what you guys think about this. One of the big things that she constantly, propagates is how how the governor election was stolen from her in 2022 is an extension of what happened to Trump in 2020. How much is this a losing talking point for Republicans all around the country? Honestly, this going back to the past, complaining about losing an election. Is it a losing point? Is it important? It doesn't seem like it helps these candidates that run on these points.
I don't know if it does unless you're Trump, because it was everyone around the country is now seen, if not has already seen what happened. The videos, the magical ballots at 3 a.m. Now they have 280 or 380,000 ballots that there's no image of now. So all these funky things happening. I don't know if individual candidates can make the same claim. And to Kevin's point about what you were saying, is I think a little bit about that, rather about her and the way that she delivers her speeches is because she's been in the media for so long. So I'd be curious to see her, and I have never seen her on a more longer form podcast where it kind of opens up, but I'm curious to see if that's maybe something where you can get a little more insight, because I've seen her and I saw her speak at AmFest, and sure, she's hitting all the buttons, but that's because that's like a big speech as compared to a campaign rally. So I don't know enough about the inner workings of Arizona, but I know someone who lives in Arizona that can come on and tell us a little bit more about that, because I think it'd be really intriguing, maybe Thursday or next week, to come on and just say, hey, what's going on with Carrie Lake?
Well, even if we pre-record something or ask somebody, let's ask, because our good friend Austin Smith, I know, is very close, who we've had on the show before. I know that he's been pretty close with Carrie and was a part of, I believe, her initial election campaign, might be working with her on this run as well. Maybe we ask him to take like a 5-minute video. I don't know, whatever, just answering
Austin Smith,
that
this is your
question.
shout out right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For real.
Before we wrap this up, one thing I just don't understand at the end of the day is that she lost the governor race 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago at this point. And now she's going for the same style race. Essentially, it's a statewide race. You're at the top of the ballot here again. I don't know. I really don't know why we do this to ourselves at the end of the day. You're obviously not a great candidate. Otherwise, you'd have been the governor. I understand that you believe that it was stolen from you. But I mean, let's have reality today. At the end of the day, you haven't won a court case regarding that allegation and whatnot. So I don't know. I really hate seeing stuff like this, because as much as we can have Trump back in the White House, we can have 55 Democrat Senate majority, and then what? We have a lame duck president that they're just going to go after every single day. So